Okay, hello chess players. Today we're going to be talking about the modern Benonie coming from the modern Benonie move order, basically beginning with d4, knight f6, c4, c5. So I'm not trying to play a King's Indian and go into the modern Benonie, just going after it from the sort of modern Benonie move order, where we play e6, knight c3, e takes d5, c takes d5, d6, and then we're going to have e4, and then we're going to have g6. So a couple of the lines that you have to deal with when you're playing this particular move order is variations that white can play to take advantage of the fact that your king is still in the middle of the board. And the main one that gives black problems is going to be the Taimanov variation, which would still begin with f4, bishop g7, and then before your king castles, it would be bishop to b5 check. But in this video, we're going to be talking about another way that white can go to try to disrupt your position before you get castled, which is he can push this pawn immediately. He can play e5. This is known as the McKinnis variation. Anyways, if you like content like this and want to see more of it, please hit that subscribe button and click on your notification icon. Now, between the two, between the McKinnis and between the Taimanov, the McKinnis is a lot less dangerous. I'm actually not, even when I played the Benonie full time, I wasn't scared of the McKinnis at all. I mean, really, white is advancing his pawns before he has any development to speak of, and black should just be completely equal. And if you remember that you're completely equal, you should actually be fine. That's kind of the one main thing that I remembered. You really do have to just remember, in my opinion, just kind of one move of theory, which is you need to remember to bring this knight back, not to capture the pawn. Capturing the pawn, you can get into some trouble. Although I think the computer says that it's still playable. And actually, of the three things that white can play that I'm scared of when playing the modern Benonie move order, which is the New York variation, the Taimanov variation, and the McKinnis, again, the McKinnis is the one I'm least scared of. The New York variation and the Taimanov definitely offer black problems. The McKinnis offers almost none. So knight fd7 is sort of the line. Now, after you play knight fd7, there's not a whole lot that white can do to mix things up or make the position look dangerous. Back when I played, e6 was a really popular move. Everybody that played this did it. I don't know why. It's really not hard to meet. You just take it and play knight b6. According to the engine, it's already slight edge black. And honestly, it's not hard to even figure out white's next couple of moves. I mean, black's next couple of moves. You're threatening bishop takes e6. White doesn't have any way to generate any threats that are terribly frightening. You know, the computer's highlighting knight e4 d6, but it's not a scary move that we have to worry about. When, of course, we can castle and get out of the middle anytime, everything is fine. I mean, if, for example, we had a4 and, you know, trying to play a5, we could just play bishop e6, and the knight still has some place to go, so we're not even in trouble from, you know, a4, a5. So e6 is nothing. You know, you just take it and play knight b6. The move that people try on the highest levels is knight e4, and they try different versions of this. Knight e4, it seems like this is what the highest rated guys play because it's probably the most forcing. Knight b5, I think, is also possible. I don't think the computer sees a difference between the two maneuvers, basically just trying to get the knight to the d6 square, and it doesn't really see a way for black to stop it. You do have to play d takes e5 at this point, and then knight d6 gets played, and then king e7, and then white can declare that he's done something. He's kept your king in the middle of the board, but he still has no pieces developed, and he certainly can't retreat the knight, so he has to keep going forward. He has to play knight c8 with check, taking a bishop that hasn't moved at all for a knight that's moved one, two, three, four times. And then we play queen c8. So, uh, just as a chess player, I'm not really concerned about this position. I have all the development. My rook has the ability to get into the game. The only consolation prize that white has is really that my king is a little. It's not going to be able to castle, but that can't be worth, you know, 3 or 4 tempo or however many tempo white has given me. So really, this position, I think the computer says that it's equal. Maybe I would say slight edge black. I'm going to go with that. I've got several games on the database. Black has done very well here. The game that I'm following right now is Waring versus Gashimov, played in France back in 2008. That game continued knight f3, pawn to e4, knight to g5. He played h6 to kick the knight. The computer gives knight b6 is equal just on the spot, but h6 is fine. Knight e4, rook e8, bishop e2, and then he played f5, just a little questionable. If we should be creating weaknesses, our king had a nice safe spot to tuck itself away a move ago. Probably knight f6 is just a little bit better. After knight f6, bishop f6, and then you tuck your king away on f8, there's literally no problems in the position for black. But needless to say, black played f5. Black ended up actually getting aggressive in the game, and black did eventually go on to win, even though f5 probably isn't the best. Maybe white's okay after f5, but the computer still gives pretty close to equality regardless. The game continued with knight c3 and a6, castles, king f8, etc. But anyways, black's okay here, but again, I would recommend against f5. I would say knight f6 is fine for equality and possibly even slight edge black. So knight e4 is the move that all of the top guys play. What does the computer say is the best line? Because in modern chess, we do have to actually worry about that because even at the lower levels, sometimes people don't go by what the top guys play. Sometimes they just go by whatever Stockfish spits out. Stockfish spits out knight f3. So knight f3 is the move that gets played. And actually, interestingly enough, not only does Stockfish spit out knight f3, this is the main line going. If you go back far enough, if you go back to like 1987, this is what people played back in 1987. I've got a game, Santiago versus Grunfeld, played in Zagreb all the way back in 1987, that actually followed down this line. And they've got moves in here that are novelties that are given as best by Stockfish, so I think that's kind of cool. But we have knight f3, and then we just have castles. So that's the reason that black isn't concerned, and nor should he be concerned, because once you get castled in this type of position, and then you have pressure on e5, and you can take at any point, your position is fine. Your development isn't going to get disrupted, and black is going to be able to get plenty of counterplay. And more importantly, black is just more developed than white. I cannot emphasize that enough. White should not be thrusting in the middle this early with e5 with no development unless he has the pieces that can come and back it up. So here we have bishop e2, d takes e5, castles, and then e4 was a novelty at the time back in 1987, but it is just the best move, according to the engine. Game continued knight e4, and then we had knight f6, and then we had knight c3, which was given an exclamation point, also just given as best according to the engine. Then we had bishop g4, which the engine didn't like this move as much as some other moves, where it just gave easy equality for black. But bishop g4 is a very standard human type move. If you eliminate one of the pieces, you should have equality. So h3 got played in the game, and then we have bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, and then we have queen b6. Other moves were possible. Bishop to e3, and then we had knight a6 in the game. We have queen b3, and then we have knight d7, and then we have d6, which at this point the engine gives major advantage white, but I will point out that if you go back, this line, of course, wasn't forced. Like even bishop g4 wasn't forced. So knight b4 was played in the game, and then we had knight to a4, which was a bad move, and then queen d6, and then of course black's doing great again. Knight c5, bishop d4, and then we had knight b7, which was what was played in the game, and then queen f4, and of course black was doing great, and it just ended in a draw. And this is the draw. It's really simple. Everything just kind of comes off the board, and then that's the draw. Uh, Maybe if we go all the way back to this position, maybe knight takes d7 was still very slight edge white, but from a preparation perspective, it's all kind of irrelevant. I mean, this whole line isn't forced. Bishop g4 is by no means obligatory, and at least according to the engine, black is doing just fine here. Black has at least equality, if not a little bit better, and that's with the absolute best play. That's with the best line. So basically, in this McKinnis variation, as long as you just remember this one little detail, just move your knight back to d7. D takes e5 is the inferior move, and you should have equality or possibly a little bit better. And just for the most part, I don't even memorize lines because here it's just like if you just make solid moves, you have more development than white. So you should be okay as long as you just make solid moves. You should be fine. So, anyways, I hope you learned something new about chess. I hope you can use some of these ideas in your own games. Thank you very much for watching.